Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Psychedelic Policy Forum. I'm your host, Noah Potter. With me is Daniel Miller, a fellow attorney and founder of the Brooklyn Psychedelic Society. I am pleased to welcome to the show, Daniel's actually my very first guest in the Brooklyn the Psychedelic Policy Forum series. I'm from Brooklyn too, so it was a bit of a slip. So without further ado, Daniel.
Hey, Noah, thank you for having me. And look, I shake your hand, but I'm sort of deathly ill at this point. I don't want to give you any disease.
Let's not say deathly ill. Let's just say a bit under the weather. But well, thanks for joining me, notwithstanding.
No problem. I've also been told that my voice at this point is like a very attractive feature, but it's not mine. It's a function of my illness. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, thank you.
There's a lot of energy around psychedelics right now. Some have said there's a psychedelic renaissance in New York and around the country, and I think the Psychedelic Society of Brooklyn is just one example of like that energy manifesting itself in productive ways. So I'm happy to come out here and talk to you about it.
Absolutely, and indeed, when I saw that there was a psychedelic meetup going in New York, Brooklyn no less, I was absolutely overjoyed. And yes, I would say there's a renaissance. Certainly when I began drug policy study, and specifically psychedelic policy study in the early 90s, there was nothing of this sort. The constituency that exists is just always amazes me and makes me happy to see it happen. So I'm really, in fact, indebted to you because this policy forum actually was inspired by your work. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you've done, what motivated you to create the society, what you've done so far, and what you hope to do going forward.
Big questions, but they're important to answer. So I think I have two main motivations. One is public policy, and I think it's an injustice that these drugs, psychedelics, are illegal, that they're totally prohibited. There's strong evidence from Johns Hopkins, from UCLA, from NYU, from University of Mexico, from Imperial College London, that shows the efficacy of psychedelics to treat addiction, to treat depression, to treat anxiety from terminal illness. And there are countless studies from the 50s and 60s, and there are more robust studies, versions of those studies that were conducted in the past, that are being conducted now, that validate the formal work. And yet, these tools, these technologies, these drugs, they can help people overcome these afflictions. They're prohibited. So people continue to suffer while these irrational laws stay on the books. So that bothers me from the standpoint of a citizen. I also have a personal experience. I was a long-time smoker of cigarettes for, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years. And for most of that time period, I smoked a pack of cigarettes a day. It was a terrible addiction. And I finally quit cold turkey, but I still struggled with the addiction every day. Not every moment of every day, but there were moments every day where I felt like I really wanted to smoke a cigarette, and I was exerting willpower, all the willpower I had within me to stop myself from smoking. And I don't really think it was a tenable path forward. I don't think I could have successfully quit without the experience I had. And so one day, not on purpose, but one day I took LSD with a friend of mine. And the next day, I had no more desire for a cigarette. I haven't had a desire for a cigarette ever since. It's like I'm a new person. There's been some studies to suggest that addiction is less about the chemical and more about the cage we're living in. And in a sense, psychedelics made my cage a much more pleasant environment. I no longer wanted to escape from it.
Interesting.
It's interesting. I actually wrote an article that's supposed to be coming out right now, actually in Newsweek, about my experience, how psychedelics transformed my cage.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful that you decided to step forward and speak about that publicly, and also great credit to it's in Newsweek.
Hey, I can't believe they decided to publish it.
It's a very interesting comment on the times in which we're living.
Absolutely.
Many things I think of something we discussed in the past, that in my assessment, the success of the cannabis legalization movement has perhaps, the psychedelic movement has grown on its own independently, largely inspired by Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, which some of you might know. But it seems to me that the transformation of public opinion on cannabis potentially has opened people's eyes to the idea there might be an alternate narrative around these substances.
That's a really good way to describe it. And to be honest, I mean, this is a small step. The fact that we're doing this, having this conversation right now, that I started this group. But that being said, you're an attorney, I'm a lawyer in New York, and we're talking about psychedelics and the potential for the therapeutic benefits for legalizing psychedelics in our society. I mean, that confers, this very conversation confers legitimacy on a movement and on an issue which has been delegitimized for decades. When most people think of psychedelics, they think of people that have dropped out of society. They think of people that take acid and just are blissfully happy.
They lose their minds.
They lose their minds and become psychotic. I mean, even if they don't, they're not productive members of society. I mean, you're an attorney at law.
Steve Jobs credited LSD for his innovation.
Right.
That's the word on the street.
Oliver Sacks, a beloved man, recently departed, an extraordinary neuroscientist, said that his psychedelic trips, his experience with LSD really helped him empathize with his patients. I mean, there are countless examples. And we could talk about the historical narrative of psychedelics and how they've been integrated in our society.
Which we will do going forward.
Sure, we have another opportunity to talk. But yeah, there's just an extraordinary amount of energy, and lots of people you wouldn't think that would be associated with this movement are.
Well, why don't you go as a point? Let's use that as our point of departure. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about what's happened with the Psychedelic Society so far? I understand that it's actually the term Psychedelic Society comes from a discussion that Terence McKenna had, but there's other psychedelic societies out and about in the West Coast and in England. And what's been the reaction of people into the events that you've had so far?
So when I came to Brooklyn about 7 months ago, I wanted to do something. I had so much energy associated with this movement, with psychedelics. I wanted to do something productive. So I started the Psychedelic Society of Brooklyn. I named it that because there are other societies with similar names around the world. But I didn't have a goal. I didn't have an objective or a vision. I think over the last several months, and we've had about 10 events, we have 2 events coming up this month, the objectives of the Psychedelic Society have crystallized. I'm not exactly sure what we'll do going forward, but I think there are 3 main causes that we can fight for. One is we need to create a sense of community. We have a lot of similarly minded people with a lot of energy, and I want to create an environment where people can feel at home, where they feel they can meet and befriend similarly minded people. The second thing is education. I think this might be the most important part of the society and what it can do. It's one thing to do a psychedelic, it's another thing, and to believe wholeheartedly that it's important to legalize psychedelics. It's another thing entirely to convince somebody else that has never tried a psychedelic that they should engage with this issue and read further.
Even that it has any legitimacy.
Right,
so
exactly.
It's a topic worth discussing.
Education, therefore, is really important. And if you want to be an effective advocate, if you want to convince somebody of something as controversial as this, you need to know what you're talking about. And this is a very intellectually rich issue. I mean, these psychedelics have been used for thousands of years on each continent other than Antarctica on the planet. They've been integrated into various societies around the globe, and even today in indigenous societies. And there's a history in this country of psychedelics being productively used. So it's important for the members of my society to understand this context and history and understand the therapeutic benefits, not just to understand psychedelics from their own personal experience. Because I do think that all causes require one-to-one advocacy, whether it's civil rights or gay rights or whatever. It requires you convincing your parents or you convincing your friends or colleagues that they should be on your team.
Or at least that they need to pay some attention to what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Themselves. We've got just a minute or 2 left. Can you just quickly,
Sure.
There's a point 3, and what do we have forward?
A couple things. So we have events. We bring in people that know a lot more about this stuff than we do, and they give lectures and talks to the membership. So I think it's really important. The other part of this, point 3, is advocacy. I do think there's some opportunity in the local level to make some noise. We were thinking of potentially creating a petition and submitting it to the local government or to maybe the governor of New York, asking for clemency for people that have been convicted and are in prison for possession of psychedelics. We were thinking of creating an out list of people that are willing to come out of the psychedelic closet. Excuse me. And I think that sort of confers legitimacy to show people in ordinary society that are willing to stand up and say, yeah, I've had a productive experience with psychedelics. So yeah, we're thinking of engaging our membership in that way. We have an event coming up on the 28th that will sort of go over this topic in more broad strokes.
It's January 28th.
Yep.
Location to be announced.
Yeah, my sickness is catching up to me, I'm sorry.
We're going to let you go get some rest.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, so the Brooklyn Psychedelic Society is a meetup group.
It is.
So if you're in the New York metropolitan area and you'd like to get to know the members and to participate, you would go to the meetup.com.
Just Google Psychedelic Society in Brooklyn and you'll find it on Facebook and Meetup. And we have over 500 members, and I hope to see you there.
Beautiful.
And I hope to see you again when I come back to talk to you.
Absolutely happy to have you on again to talk about what's been going on. You've been making tremendous strides already, and I appreciate very much you taking a leadership role. And I trust this is just the beginning.
Absolutely.
As we begin to sketch out the issues, to do the thought experiment, the elements of a regulated market for psychedelics, without criminal penalties, regulated under civil law, and to begin to design the future.
I think just one more comment from me, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
I think a post-prohibition world is coming to a theater near all of us sooner than we think. I don't know what it will look like, but we have the chance and the opportunity to help design it, and I'm happy that you're going to do that with me.
Well, I mean, I'm delighted.
I shake your hand again, Bill. Let's keep away. There we go.
Namaste. Thanks for joining us. Special thanks to our multi-talented multimedia expert and director of photography and cannabis legalization activist par excellence, Jano Tentango, who's doing the filming. Thank you, Jano. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. See you again soon.